Hey, Trails Collective world. Ian here with the Trails Collective live episode, originally airing September 21st. Thank you to any who may be tuning in live to this episode or broadcast. If you are tuning in live, it would be great to have your voice in the mix with any questions or comments for any of the topics or any of the guests. If you do want to weigh in with any comments or questions, feel free to drop them into either the Trails Collective's Facebook or YouTube channels. They should come through. Sometimes we'll get the comments on the broadcast through to my personal Facebook page, and for some reason it still doesn't patch through, and I haven't had the time or bandwidth in life to try to figure out why yet. So if you got a question or comment, feel free to drop it into the Trails Collective sites. So each week, it's been fun to bring you voices from, I guess, trail and ultra running, in some cases throughout the world. I think we've had guests, at least a couple in the past, that are patching in from Europe. But typically, I'm trying to focus on bringing you voices from the Northeast or the Beast Coast here, even if they are coming in from some national events. And then here or there, we'll just patch in also some voices from maybe events that aren't East Coast. But we try to give the East Coast for sure some love, just because it often doesn't get as much, I feel like, in the media for. So we'll try to do our part there. And there's a lot of cool events. It was the original hope of Trails Collective to just weave together the any number of individuals and facets and communities that really make up the trail running world. The original intent was to have sections on the website, which is trailscollective.com, to have, for instance, running stores and what kind of trail product they carry, and trail running groups and physical therapists that maybe focus in on runners specifically. Pat Blair, thanks for tuning in there. Also from events that may not get as much exposure. And so if we can try to bring you some voices and stories from the trail, hopefully it brings us all closer together and really celebrates the connections that really bring us together. I think the trail running community and world is a pretty amazing space. And really, I think, particularly in a time of the world where everything is too often inflamed and divisive, that trail running and the community is something that can bring us together, that we can share the experience, that we can share the places. And I just really appreciate the opportunity to just be a part of that larger community. So for all of those who are supporting, whether giving your time as guests, bringing your voices, I really appreciate it. I know, especially after race week, for instance, I just patched in Arlen for a second, coming off on rubber run 100-miler, even though I know Arlen eats 100-milers for breakfast. At some level, you got to be kind of tired and working on catching up in sleep. Or Brianna throwing down a pretty amazing effort, or also in the back end, Jana with the Barkley Classic. You all kind of have to be kind of tired at the moment and trying to catch up on other things in life. So I really appreciate you all taking some time to share your voices for any who may be joining us. And for those who tune in after the fact, this will live on where I guess podcasts live. Another shout out and thanks to Ellie Pell for bringing it through or turning it into just podcast form. So I'm thankful and grateful to be here. And so it'll be another hopefully full episode, bringing you some voices and stories from the trail. For those who also support us through just plugging it in your own feeds, I appreciate it. For those who reach out, let me know or cue me into events that might be running, I appreciate it, or any other just updates. I did get, I think it was Pat had reached out, maybe somebody did. It's kind of a blur at the moment. The Shawnee Trail Race coming up, and let me see, I'm going to try to get you that detail. My computer made its own self decision to restart here at some point, and so I kind of lost that window coming in under the wire. But I will try to bring it and plug the Shawnee Race coming up. Actually, I think I got it right here. Bear with me. All right. So actually it was from Craig Diatley, who sent it to me. So a plug, just sending a note about a tough 50-miler coming up in a couple weeks. Basically one loop. There's a short opening loop, part of which is repeated. 54 miles over 11,000 feet of gain, making for a challenging day, no doubt. It's the ShawneeTrailrun.com. I think we had actually plugged this maybe a couple of years ago and brought in a voice. But start and finish the Shawnee State Park Lodge with a restaurant and lodging. You can spend the weekend, 5 a.m. start. And there's group camp spot reserved for the event. So it's coming up just a couple weeks. If you have an interest and have a hole in your calendar for a tough 50 miler, it looks like it's very much Beast Coast. Also a plug to Eric Egan of Trails Rock. He's been doing quite a bit of work, which I'm thankful for, in creating for the Trails Collective website articles on trail communities and states. So I think he just plugged another one. So if you've got are so inclined some time, head over to the Trails Collective site, look at the feature articles that are there, and a big thanks to Eric for that work. There are a number of events that are registrations open, but they're about to cap out. So here and there, I'll try to make mention in case you are hoping to catch an event and just missed the registration window. Massachusetts' Womp Romp 10K, 50K running October 22nd. New Hampshire's Mid-State Massive 50 miler running October 8th. And PA's Green Monster Trail 15, 25, 50K running October 9th. All are on the warning track for ultra sign up and will fill up pretty soon. So get on those if you are so inclined. All right. So Adam, if you were on that back end, I am going to weave you in here. So Adam, thanks for being on, man.
Yeah. So,
all right. So for those who may not know Adam already, he is coming to us from Liberty, PA. He is a regular front of the pack runner at some tough PA trail races. More recently from Heiner to Green Monster to Black Forest to Eastern States. I think you had a pretty solid time for yourself at Eastern States, right? I think this year, but the field was a little bit deeper, so your place was a little further back. But a solid effort. And a good year also of reaching the goal of sitting on atop a Spartan Podium. And in this case, was it the Spartan Beast that just happened in Vermont? Is that what it was?
it was the Ultra and the Beast on Saturday, and then they just did a sprint on Sunday.
Okay. And did you do both? Did you do a 2-day format?
No, I just did the Ultra Saturday.
Okay. And the Ultra, I mean, I've heard of it before, but for those who aren't in the OCR mix or the Spartan mix, what's the Ultra entail for Spartan?
So it's a loop of the Beast course, and then they add in an ultra loop, which is like an extra 4 miles. And you just do the extra ultra loop on the first loop, and then you get back on the Beast course. You go to the transition, you put a drop bin in the transition, and then you go back out, and then you just run the Beast course again. The second loop is just the Beast course. So it's like a 50K and about 70 obstacles.
Whew. Yeah, dude, that's a lot of miles and a lot of obstacles. So what's the so versus I guess a tough trail 50K time for you? I mean, I guess how do you compare the two? One, in terms of just beat down, and then two, what's a good time for like a Spartan Beast versus just a tough trail 50K?
Well, so I did the Killington Ultra in 10 hours and 16 minutes and 5 seconds. And it had about 15,000 feet of gain in it. So, I mean, yeah, it depends where they're at. I ran one back in the spring down in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and that was about 6.5 hours.
Okay.
So it just depends.
So Fayetteville, relatively speaking, is just kind of soft, is what you're saying there.
I got my ass kicked in that one. So.
And was that just because it was you get people that are just moving through faster, and then you end up doing better like on the obstacles, and just like that, almost the tougher it is in terms of terrain and gain, you just kind of perform better, you think, in the mix?
Yeah, I just do better with the mountains.
Yep. So, and then so this past weekend you were atop the podium, right? Kind of first. Was that overall or was that division?
Just in my age group.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So a solid Spartan finish, but really the reason I'm having you on here, which I think pretty much ups the or tops the Spartan, is the I think which was your first win in a pie eating contest, I believe.
That's correct.
Yeah. So how would you, I guess, compare the Spartan Ultra or Beast with the pie eating contest?
I don't know. I enjoyed them both.
That's fair.
So I'd probably rather do the Spartan though. Lasts a little longer.
And then the overall taste in your mouth? I mean, I'm assuming Spartan, you got a lot of sweat running down your face, maybe some mud there. So it actually tastes just kind of like dirty, whereas the pie was probably really good for a little bit.
Yeah, I don't really remember.
That's
I was
fair.
just trying to beat the kid next to me.
Which looked like he was kind of maybe half your age and he was just going after it.
Yeah, I had the early lead, and then he cleaned out the middle of his pie. And then I looked over, I was like, oh, damn. And so I had to pick it up. And then I couldn't get the bottom out, so I flipped the damn thing over and then just hit the bottom with my chin and ate the rest off the picnic table.
Which is good, where you're just adapting in the moment. And so it sounds
Yeah,
like there's a good amount of technique involved, and it just kind of came natural to you in the moment in terms of just the raw competitor that you are.
yeah, yeah. It seemed like a good idea at the time, so I went for it.
That's good. And then did you get to choose the flavor of your pie? How's that work?
No, they were all apple.
They were all apple.
And yeah, and it wasn't really fair because my buddy Grant and his wife Jess, they sat at the pies that were like homemade, and they were like these big frickin' pies that weighed like 5 pounds, and they were screwed right from the start.
um, and so when they say go, I mean, there's got to be a good amount of adrenaline rush in there where you're just kind of going all in at that point and just kind of like just savage, I would think.
Yeah, I was a little nervous because there was like, I don't know, a shit ton of people watching, and then it was like once they said go, you just go for it.
Um, and at some point, I imagine in Spartan, you're going to kind of get cramp or have a tough time on an obstacle for the pie eating. Did you feel like you were that you were exceeding your capacities? I mean, did you have to kind of come up for air? Did you start cramping up, like your jaw just started kind of getting tight, and you were just like, I don't know whether I can finish this?
No, I knew I could finish it. I had apples stuck up my nose, so I did the old ultra snot rocket to the side. I had to blow that out a couple of times. Yeah, and then I almost lost it right at the end, getting the last few bites down. But
And just lost it in terms of it coming back up and just not being able
yeah,
to kind of hold it down.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, do you think that going forward for Spartan obstacles, that it would probably be tougher of them rather than some kind of mamby-pamby like bars that you just kind of monkey bar across, or you go up and ring a bell or jump some sort of little thing of fire? Do you think that it's probably accurate to say that it would probably be tougher if you had to eat a whole pie as an obstacle before you could move on?
Yeah, that would make things interesting.
I think that it would too.
Jump
Um,
a jump the fire at the end, then down a pie, and then cross the finish line.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I'm guessing that would mix up the field pretty well. And so Ken's weighing in. What kind of recovery from the pie eating? I'm sure that took some time to just kind of come back down off that win.
No, actually, I went up to Eric's house that night to work it off. We did hill repeats, and he had a dirt road behind his house, and we 3/10 of a mile. We were doing like 225, 250 gain, and we did that like all night long, and I got like 11,000 feet of gain in 31 miles. So
That sounds about right for what I know of you and Eric.
yeah,
And so I imagine that just you kind of just exuded apple for that whole workout in terms of just coming out the pores.
yeah. I took some stuff along to eat, but yeah, I think I was fueled up pretty good with a whole apple pie.
That's good. Well, right on. Well, I was. It was cool to see your Spartan podium because I know that that means quite a bit to you. But I was really excited to see and talk to you about the pie eating win. So I just want to say a big congrats on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. And what you got in your season? I mean, I'm guessing you're done with pies. Maybe you'll reconsider on Thanksgiving coming back in. But any other events that you're in the lineup for?
Well, I'm planning on going back next year. I think they're going to do the Harvest Festival in town next year, and I'll defend my pie eating championship. But yeah, tomorrow I'm leaving for Stratton, Vermont. I have the OCR World Championships up there this weekend. And then October 1st, I go to Jersey for another Spartan Ultra.
Right on. Cool. Well, I was hoping to touch base with a couple people after Stratton. So it'd be cool to see how it plays out for you as well. So good luck on that one.
Yeah, thanks. Should
Yeah,
be
man,
fun.
Adam, thanks for tuning in, man. And I'll talk to you more later.
Yeah, later.
All right, dude. See ya. All right. So that's solid. All right. So another similar burly effort. Speaking of the length of some of the Spartan Ultra or beasts, I am going to weave in Jana. Jana, it's good to see you again.
Hey, Ian, good to see you.
Good to see you. Yeah, I think the last time I talked to you, I was reflecting on how good you looked when you passed me, as if I were standing still in Hellgate, and you looked kind of fresh as a daisy as you came by. It's almost like you started a mile before, and I think that I had been walking probably for miles at that point. So you've continued to, yeah.
Let's do that again in December.
I know it's strange that I haven't run much this year, but oddly, I find myself considering sending in a Hellgate application, and I'm not really sure why. It's kind of confusing because it would be a really poor decision. But I may take you up on that. So speaking of you and being a relative glutton, and this is a big weekend for Maryland. Maryland was hot this weekend in terms of athletes with laying down some pretty awesome performances in some pretty tough events. So Jana, you're coming to us from Hagerstown. Is that right, Maryland? Yep. So she was second female at the Barkley Fall Classic in a time of 10 hours and 50 minutes. And although maybe only slightly less noteworthy than a recent women's win at the Jarman's Invitational Marathon, which is, I think, probably the highlight of most people's seasons, would probably be Jarman's. Barkley is still pretty solid on the second. And so clearly you enjoy participating in things that some people would really say suck. And so you getting into Barkley really isn't surprising. So what was the Barclay Draw? And let's talk about how it went down, where one of your takeaways was that you're just kind of hooked and want to go deeper into it.
Well, the idea was that me and my best friend Cheryl, who's a really strong runner, will do Barkley Fall as an adventure. And then things happened and she couldn't do it because we got in on the first round and actually started planning, going and training. And then she couldn't come with me. So I knew I'm going to go. I still wanted to do it. I planned my summer basically racing tough mountain races to build up to this effort. And I went, and it actually ended up doing better than I thought. I think when they put it out on social media, it sounds really intimidating, and it's Laz, and you hear the Barkley and how tough it is. But actually, with like really solid training and focus, and some sense of orientation, and I'm known to get lost in like really straightforward, well-marked races. I did really well on my first time there. So it can be done. It can be done. I brought my friend Holly with me, who's not a runner, but she knows a lot about races, being behind the scenes of JFK 50 miler. So that was a good idea. Bring a friend. She did the driving logistics, and I just did the prep, the racing, and had a great time doing that.
And so for the Fall Classic, is it really just a microcosm of what most people know as Barkley?
So we call it Baby Barkley because it's a 30 miles. I think this one was about 34 miles, but it has the main features of the big Barkley. It has the rat jaw, the math lab, the testicle spectacle, all those monster climbs. It has those in. So you actually get a taste of what the actual big Barkley is. And then to friends that want to try this, make it a long weekend adventure. Be part of the pre-race dinner, the movie, meeting the local people, and just the whole experience. We actually wanted the whole experience that badly. We stayed in this little cedar cabin with an outhouse and outdoor shower in the middle of nowhere. and it was really amazing adventure. Now, not gonna lie, I really focused on training for this because I wanted to do well. So it's definitely a hard 50K. It took a lot of fitness, a lot of fitness. A lot of it is in the second half of the race, hottest part of the day when you hit those giant climbs. Um, the Briar Patch, now running this in the front of the race in the top 10 is really painful because you are going through the briars, down and up Red Jaw, and you're basically making a way for the hundreds of people behind you. So you're the first person, one of the first people in the Briar Patch, just getting all torn up. But it's a lot of fun.
And so is it similar to a larger one, also not marked? I mean, you're following maps, or you just commenting on getting lost and maybe that being intimidating for a lot of trail runners? I'm assuming if you're still there, Jana, just lost your visual.
Lost you there.
Yeah. I think you're back in there. So is it similar where you're pretty much just having to work on like map and compass work, or is the Fall Classic trail marked or the course marked?
The major intersections or some major confusing parts are marked, not really well. When you come to the race packet pickup, we were given a map and immediately got together with some people that did this before and studied the map. So definitely you need to study the map and just have some kind of an idea what you will be doing. What I did that really helped me, took a little piece of paper and just wrote down the trails we're going to follow and memorize that, so I would know that I'm supposed to be on this trail, then this trail, then this trail. That helped. My fear was that I'm going to get separated from the front group at some point and be alone. And that actually never happened. There was always somebody near that knew what we were doing or that helped make the decision we should turn this way. And so actually it wasn't that hard to follow, but you do need to study the map.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's definitely an advantage to know the course. Andrea Larson, who won this year and she won last year, she spent some time out there, knew the course, and so that's definitely an advantage doing this race.
And does this course stay the same year to year for the Fall Classic?
No, it changes every year. So of course, every year they say this is the toughest year, but I actually think comparing the times from last year's, this was a really tough course because even the leading men, even Andrea's time was 10 hours. So it was pretty challenging year. It changes.
And for the slow times, you think it's more a reflection of just because you're going through briars, the slower to navigate those types of things, and so it can be kind of mentally and soul tough, or is it really just the terrain and the? I mean, because you've been on some like really, I mean, tough courses in terms of elevation gain loss, yet your time is way slower than it would be at some of the comparable events. I mean, I'm assuming the Fall Classic is roughly the same time, actually probably took you longer than Hellgate. So what makes it so slow?
I think it's the climbs because it's mentally challenging, sure, but it's physically extremely challenging because of the humongous climbs. I can't describe that in words. You have to see it because the rule is you have to stay under the power lines when you're going up these climbs. And they're not really trails like the Briar Patch. You have to make your own way. So that half a mile, they're short but crazy steep. Like the half a mile will take hour plus to climb up. And so I think it's slow because of those climbs, because surprisingly, a lot of it is runnable. Even if it's technical, it's rolling and runnable and fast. But once you get to those big climbs like Red Jaw and Math Lab and Testicle Spectacle, those are huge climbs. So that's what makes it slow.
Is it true that you may have gotten to the bottom of Testicle Spectacle and you just be like, actually, this trail maybe doesn't apply to me. Clearly, this was set by kind of an aggro white dude in terms of giving it the name, and I'm just going to go like a different way here because I think it's a different course.
No, that would be disqualified.
Yeah,
but definitely, the man behind this race is brutal. The whole race is just a, suffering and punishment, and who can suffer the most best to make it look easy is the tough. But I think the toughest part was when we got down those climbs to the other side, to the turnaround where John Kelly was punching everybody's bib, and it was just so refreshing and motivating. Then you realize you have to go back because that's the turnaround point. So you have to go back up those climbs again. And the front runners, we were going back, fighting the climbs and surviving that. And we started seeing our friends that were just heading that way, knowing that these people are not going to make the cutoffs. There was just no way. But try to be encouraging. And then going back up Red Jaw and the observation tower, there were people just laying on the ground holding their heads. They were just done. So that's really hard because then you realize just how much physical strength and mental it takes to actually make the entire 50K. There were 108 finishers this year only, so it's pretty challenging. But if you focus on your training and show up just thinking, I'm just going to have fun, adventure, see how far I can go, it can be actually a really good experience. And then running through Brushy Mountain Prison, you run in that tunnel under there, climbing over the prison wall. It's really cool experience. It's unique. I mean, there's nothing else like it. So I definitely, I can see that people get all caught up in it, and it's fascinating. And it's definitely.
And so for you, you were left with a really good vibe, and you could see it in that finish video where you came across as well out of that prison area, and you just looked like you were in a very good spot mentally, emotionally, physically for that effort, and so it left you wanting more. So how does it go with the second place women's finish? Does that give you some sort of auto entry, or just makes you able to apply for the full plate?
So anyone can apply now. The first place finisher still has to apply, and I don't think there's a guarantee that you get picked or not, but the first place kind of gives you the ticket to be selected. So I had the privilege to spend some time with Andrea, our ladies champion, and she was actually in top 3, which I think was the first time ever that a woman was in top 3, and talk to her a little bit because she has that quiet warrior tough vibe. She's definitely a different level of tough as far as women go, and we think she might do something special. She has that ability. So she is going to do Big Barkley in spring. She's ready. So that's exciting to see. Would I want to do it? I would like to do it again and maybe, spend some more time out there and practice running around those trails so I would know the area a little better. Though my next year is looking a little different in terms of these 50Ks. So we'll see. But yeah, I had a really good experience. So I would love to go back and see if I can do something better.
Cool. Right on. So what do you have left the rest of your year? Anything? Well, I'm commenting on the possibility of Hellgate, but anything else you got in the lineup?
I'm doing JFK 50 miler. It's the 60th anniversary. So that's our big local tradition. So I'm doing that. And then 2 weeks later is Hellgate. So hopefully that'll keep me in shape for Hellgate. And that will be the end of the year.
Right on. Well, you are one tough individual. So nice work on another solid finish. And thanks for tuning in and taking a little bit of your time here tonight again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
For sure. All right. I'll talk to you more later.
Bye.
All right, see ya. All right, so we are switching gears from Ultra territory and turning toward Pennsylvania on this one. And I am going to weave in Stephanie. Thanks for being on there and here. And if Shoney is able to pull away, I was hoping she could be on with us as well, but thought that maybe she couldn't. But she was going to tune in last minute here if she could. So, Stephanie, it is good to have you here.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. And so this one, in terms of the focus on the event, we are turning toward Rockin' the Knob. Speaking of trails called Testicle Spectacle, another very aptly, clearly male-dominated race name, I think, here on Rockin' the Knob. 10K, half, and marathon put on by the Allegheny Trail Runners in Claysburg, PA. They have a tagline of PA's highest trail race. And so Stephanie was top female on the day in 6:29 with Frozen Snot in Laurel Highlands earlier in the year. A pretty solid year, and it's good to be this far in, notching a women's win there. And so first question for you, and related to it being PA's highest race, would be how anyone gets anywhere or anything done if everyone is all doped up and high at the event, or whether it's possible because there's solid munchies at aid stations as a motivator.
You know what? I didn't stop at one aid station, so I can't even begin to tell you what was at the aid stations. Did not stop one aid station.
Nice work. And then 6:29. So you were just having at it in terms of self-supply for 6 hours. What were you packing or carrying there?
Peanut butter and jelly.
Mm-hmm.
That's what got me through the 50K at Laurel Highlands. And at the end, I gave it to Ben, my favorite race director. Gave it to Ben Major. He's just a slight bit sadistic.
Yes,
slight bit.
Yes,
yeah.
Which was really driven home by that 100K, which some people had a tough day and night with in terms of Ironstone. So yes, some sadism there. So when you say you gave the peanut butter and jelly to Ben, does that mean you kind of carried a peanut butter and jelly through the race and then gave him one? What do you mean by you gave it to him?
I have I hate to admit it, I'm a little embarrassed, like a little fanny pack, and I sort of munch like a little squirrel through the whole race. And at the end of the race, it turns into like a big ball mush, and he gets it because, nobody puts on a race like Ben Major. So that last 25-mile climb, he gets my peanut butter and jelly when it's all mushed together with sweat and maybe a little saliva. He can have it. That's his prize at the end.
So for the fanny pack, is that more just with your trail running and racing? Or let's say you kind of said, I have the opportunity to take a trip over to, let's just say, Paris next year for you. Would you take said fanny pack and just kind of cruise around Paris wearing a fanny pack?
No, it's not a fashion statement. It's just It's just for the trail. I don't do a backpack. I carry a handheld and a fanny pack, and then I shove some goodies down my sports bra.
Yep.
They capture it. They capture it. Yes, they capture it every time in the races.
We do have a good one out here. I could step aside and grab it, but a couple of the good sports bras that have the pockets kind of down the front by intention there. I mean, maybe you're just good at stuffing without that. But you could always let me know if you want the kind that are designed with pockets, and we do carry those on occasion.
It would be much better because I put a baggie down there and I always chafe. So that would be much better.
Well, maybe we can follow up on that. And sorry, so you're packing for 6 hours though. What are you doing if you're just carrying a handheld and then peanut butter and jelly? I mean, that's a long stretch with just like a say 20 ounce handheld there.
I lied. I stopped at one aid station and I filled my water bottle with Tailwind. So it was like a 2-second stop. I don't stop at aid stations. I don't. That's usually where I pass most of my runners. That's usually where I make my time up on a lot of runners. I try not to spend more than maybe a minute in an aid station if I do stop. Never sit. I never sit.
So roughly 40 ounces of fluid and one peanut butter and jelly. That was the you got Tailwind in one. So that's that was the nutrition plan.
Yeah. I've never done anything over a 55 miler. So
you can kind of get by with that.
Yeah. I'm not sure how I would go after that. The 55 miler was for fun, and I spent about 20 minutes in the aid station every time I came through the loop. So I can't go by experience from that one. I can't learn from that one.
And so for those not familiar with Rockin' the Knob, just give us the brief rundown on what Rockin' the Knob is all about in terms of the course and the profile. And it sounds like, I have not run there, but it sounds like it's a pretty cool course. So just give us the kind of the quick rundown of it.
Rockin' the Knob, let's see. It's one of my favorites. The marathon was a bucket lister for me. I've always done the half. The half course it's a beautiful course. It's set up on the mountain up by the ski resort, a Blue Knob ski resort. You run there's a lot of downhills, and it's relatively flat to begin with. I take my time when I come out, the beginning. You hit a couple nice hills. Ben has a lot of nice names for the hills. There's one that's called I Need a Sherpa towards the end that you have to grab onto sticks to make it up the hill. He threw a ski slope in last year, right about mile 14. There's some nice climbs, nice elevations. Like I said, in the marathon, there was one right at the end that I think it was a little over 1,000 feet climb coming up at mile 25. Course is nice. It's beautiful. They added a bike trail on the 10K. You go through, for the marathon, you do a 20-mile, and then at the end you go through, it's called Quitters Row Aid Station, and then you loop onto the 10K course. And it was a really beautiful, nice mountain bike course. But if you know Ben, he puts you into a nice little sense of, oh, this is really easy. And then you run down this nice, I guess you could call it like a fire road. And you always know when you're going downhill, there's about to be a huge uphill. And that's when you hit that 25-mile mark and you climb for, like I said, I think it was like a 1,300 feet climb.
That's a solid mile or so.
Yeah, it was lots of fun. I started to contemplate what normal people do on Saturday afternoons, but
yeah, that's a good question. I mean, here we are filling an episode this week, and well, there's a whole lot of people that did very, I don't know. I mean, it's tough, right? That's our bubble. That's our world. Isn't this normal? Isn't this what everybody does? But maybe
it was like I said, it was that climb. But that was one of the hardest races I've done so far. And I've been running for 20 some years. That was the hardest, by far, way harder than the Laurel Highlands 50K. So
yeah. And how about, I mean, Frozen Snot? You've done Frozen Snot, right? Was
yes.
That in your, yeah. I mean, mile for mile, I guess, depending on the year, Frozen Snot's got to be a bit burlier there.
I did Frozen Snot last year. There was no snow. It was warm. And I was told that I was very lucky because I can't handle the cold weather really well. So I'm waiting to see what happens this year. I really, really enjoyed Frozen Snot. I thought it was wonderful. The last climb was amazing. I've really gotten into trail running this year, and I really love the elevation. Frozen Snot was amazing for me, but I don't know how I'll handle it when it gets really cold and snowy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I had a relatively mild year at Frozen Snot as well. I mean, we definitely had snow, and there was, but we got a really nice day as well. So I don't know how that would go with ice, where you're needing to get some yak tracks or micro spikes or something like that. That would really change the nature of it. And then Dean weighed in with it's an easy course. And Dean, you just ran Rockin' the Knob as well, right? I think you were just in that mix. I think in that lineup. But I think you were referring to in that comment with the Rockin' the Knob being it's an easy course. So. Well, they'd be fighting words there for Stephanie saying it was a not so much, but we'll
No, Dean has to weigh in that way. He's in the running club with me. He has to say that stuff.
Yeah.
Just ran with him last night.
So what else you got coming up in your season? Anything else that's in the lineup?
I am training for my first 100 miler.
Oh, right on.
North Carolina, Beast of the East.
Uh-huh.
I was sort of I don't normally back down from a challenge. I planned on doing the 50 miler. And my coach is Eric Kosick and said I could do the 100 miler. So, of course, I said I can. And not really sure what I signed up for, but that's what I'm doing. December, I'm going to do Beast of the East, 100 miler.
Cool. Well, Eric does have some experience there to weigh in, but maybe I'm going to call an audible here, and I'm going to give maybe 60 seconds or whatever before I boot them back out. Arlen and Dan, I am going to weave you in here. Arlen and Dan, thanks for being on the back end. So Stephanie, and I'm going to put you on the spot here. You've got about 60 seconds apiece to try to draw whatever nuggets of information you can from these two savvy 100-mile runners going into your first one. So now putting you on the spot, you'd be like, dude, I don't know in the moment what to ask, but you've got a minute or two here to do it in case you have any questions.
It's a nutrition. I have problems with nutrition. Like I said,
I think
didn't
you're
stop.
fine with just 40 ounces and peanut butter and jelly. I think for 100 miles, I think you just call it good there.
It worked for a marathon and a 50K, but it's not going to work for a 100-miler. I know it's not.
So Dan and Arlen, weigh in on what works for you guys on nutrition.
Go ahead, Dan.
I eat a lot of gels just because that's what I train with, and a ton of Tailwind, and I chug gallons of Coke. Every aid station I can, I just chug as much Coke as I can, but I think everybody's different. If I eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, I would probably vomit it immediately. But yeah.
So my little fanny pack of peanut butter and jelly wouldn't work for you.
Not me, but I think everybody's different. I chug as much Coke as possible.
And Shannon, sorry, I just caught you down there too, so I'm going to weave you in. So Arlen and Shannon, you can weigh in on what works for you both for nutrition as well.
I do the PB&Js personally. I eat the little Uncrustables sandwiches. I went through like 30 of those during Grindstone last weekend. So yeah, everyone is different.
Yeah, go with the peanut butter and jelly. You'll never see me eating one of those out there, but go with it. Yeah, I'm with Dan on the Coke. But after I finished my last one, my crew is like, you didn't drink hardly any Coke for that race. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't use my last resort. But yeah, I fuel the last 300s. I fueled primarily with, you're going to think I'm a marathoner, and I'm not. But Morton, I've used a lot of Morton the last couple, and that has worked out well for me. But then, yeah, I use Spring Energy for gels, and the combination seems to work pretty good for me. But don't do what I do. Do what I say, because yeah, if peanut butter and jelly is working for you, just take a bunch of it with you and go for it.
Right on. All right.
Well, thank you. Thanks.
All right, I'm going to push you guys back out of here and close out with Stephanie here, and then I'll get back to you here in just a minute. So nice work, and that's exciting. And so what month is that for you?
December.
So you got some time here. So nice work.
Thank you.
Yeah, totally. Well, maybe we can see how that 100 goes in December, and maybe reconnect with you.
I would love that. I just want to finish. I don't have, that's all I want to do. I don't want to be back on here saying I didn't finish. So. Well,
there it is. Then. So maybe I'm just going to have to invite you either way. So if you DNF, that's just going to be I'd say unfortunate, but whatever. I guess it is what it is, right? We all have those days, but hopefully you have an awesome first attempt and it goes really well.
Well, thank you for having me.
Totally. All right, Stephanie, thanks so much. And maybe I'll talk to you more later.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Bye. All right. So moving through again, I am going to shift gears and head to Grindstone on this one. And we are going to weave back in Dan and Shannon. Thanks for being on again and plugging in. So Grindstone, for those not in the know, a classic 100 run in George Washington National Forest in Virginia. One of the tougher in the East and one of the few qualifiers for some of the big dances. Dan Frank coming to us from Columbia, Maryland. Get that? Yeah. Ran the third fastest in history for the event in 1829 and in the lineup of some of the best 100 milers in the world. So third of all time on that course is a pretty awesome mark. It goes back a ways. I think it also points to just how good, I know he's still in the mix, so don't want to just put it past tense, but just how good Carl was in the prime of not only the number that he could pick off, but just the fast times that he was throwing down as well, and how well they've stood the test of time.
Definitely.
And then Shannon coming at us from Baltimore. Is that where you're based?
Yep.
Yeah. So definitely Maryland's just killing it this past weekend. Top female and 17th fastest in history in 24:25. So also a really solid performance. For both of you, I can't remember if I went down the list. Was this both of your first grindstones, or either one of you returning?
First one.
First
First
one.
100-miler, actually.
First 100-miler as well.
Yeah, I've only pasted before, so this is my first time at Grindstone.
Yep,
Yep.
I pasted before also.
Right on. And Shannon, you've been thinking about this for a while. Why, in terms of choosing your first 100, why Grindstone?
Because it's supposed to be the hardest one.
No,
and
it's not. Come on. I mean, it's tough, but come on. I've done the metrics. I've done the data. But all right, keep going. Didn't mean to cut you.
No, most of all, it's because I paced my friend Katrina twice at this race. So I was familiar with a lot of the course already. I had the FKT on the Wild Oak Trail at one point as well. So I've been out there and run a lot of that stuff. And, it's a pretty easy drive from Baltimore. And it felt like home turf in a way, and a good challenge.
So how would you compare 25 miles worth of the Twat to 25 miles worth at its burliest section of Grindstone?
Yeah, the Twat is pretty runnable for a lot of it, but the toughest climb in the Grindstone course, in my opinion, is also part of that trail. So, a lot of overlap for sure.
So that's got to give you some confidence going in on a trail, one that feels like your backyard, and that you've had some solid, or your body's performed well over that terrain. Yeah. Have you done one of the Twats, or have just gone out on the loop quite a bit?
No, this was during the pandemic. I was chasing FKTs a little bit back during that period of time when we couldn't race. Yep.
Nice work. And then Dan, for you, so some personal association with Grindstone, but what other hundreds have you done?
The only other 100 race I've done is Leadville. And I've run like just 100 charity run I did around my neighborhood during the pandemic also.
Yep. And for, two events that are people just love those events. I know some people love Grindstone and they'll go back to Grindstone year over year, but it also seems like those that go out to Leadville, by and large, just totally inspired by their Leadville experience as well, and enter kind of that Leadville family. But with that said, kind of different. I mean, I've been to Leadville, but not to the race. But kind of a different feel, right? I mean, Leadville is kind of a monstrosity of sorts, whereas Grindstone still maintains that classic trail ultra vibe.
Definitely. Like, I had been to Leadville a bunch of times just playing in the mountains, and I kind of fell in love with that town before the race, and just those mountains. And the race is totally different vibe. You got that big Lifetime Fitness thing, which is fun in its own way, but I definitely feel the vibe more towards the Grindstone, sort of local, low key. When I finished, there was like 2 friends there, and the Boy Scout, headmaster guy there cheering me on, which is just so much cooler than the big thing. But I really wanted to do an East Coast race where, altitude didn't crush me.
Yep. I guess that is a beautiful, weave in the comment from Adam here as we were talking about Twat, where her Dan wants to do the double Twat. So there's always the 200-miler at Twat. There, right? Yeah.
That option's always there.
That's
Adam,
there.
I'll do it if you do it.
Yes. Yeah. Well, Adam, there's the challenge. It's out there now. So I'll have you guys both back on to comment on how the Twat 200 goes for you. So we'll get back there. So it is interesting, right, in terms of just the picture you just painted of the reality of our ultra world, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? You get I guess it's growing so quickly in terms of numbers, in terms of capital or dollars being pumped into it, in terms of media. You get some of these high profile events, and we'll bring in Arlen here in a little bit, and hopefully Rachel as well, to comment on Run Rabbit Run. And Run Rabbit Run, I think I did the 50 mile before 100 mile existed, and a different vibe, but in terms of how much media and attention goes into that one, when the reality is still historically, and for most of us, or for most at least finishers, you're finishing, maybe in the daylight, maybe in the dark, but to your point, there's like maybe 2 people standing there, and maybe one of them's your crew, and and maybe somebody rings a cowbell for you, and it's just like, wow, like I just laid out to this monumental effort, and there was just like that kid over there that was just cheering for me when I came in. Yeah. Yeah. So for those not already familiar with Grindstone, maybe Dan, lay out, kind of paint the picture of Grindstone in terms of course or what you're going after.
Sure. It's a out and back, or virtually an out and back, which I love. Everyone loves loops, but the beauty of like when you're really racing to win out and back is like you get to see where everybody's at, which makes that race aspect so much more interesting. It claims 100 miles. I think it's more like 98. You got like 21,000 feet of gain. And it just ends with 2 seemingly not big climbs and descents, but they're just monstrous. That last descent down these power lines that I know, Shannon, you probably felt were just as painful as I did.
Yep, tough on the quads.
Yeah.
And so what did you both do for precursors in terms of training or building up? Anything that other events that you inlaid as precursors?
Yeah, for me, I did the World's End 100K, which was actually last year, and it went horrible. It was like the ultimate learning experience. Everything that could go wrong during that race did, but I still ended up with a pretty good result in terms of my placement. So it gave me a lot of confidence in a weird way, to kind of tweak the things I needed to tweak with my training, and feel better 63 miles into Grindstone than I did at the end of World's End. And so that was like my big kind of pivotal training moment.
All right. So that one being, so this was just, so it was last year in 21, or this was just in June?
Yeah,
21. Okay. So with you in terms of that as a precursor, it's interesting. I wasn't necessarily thinking that, but that becomes maybe in some ways a more powerful answer where you're going in and making those mistakes and learning from them. What were a couple of those? What do you feel like just what went wrong that you focused on changing ahead of Grindstone?
The 2 big things, one of them I think is probably a universal answer to this, and that was nutrition. I knew what I liked to eat during my runs, but I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a plan for how many calories I was going to take in and when. And once you get to that point in the race where you're tired, you start just kind of guessing and doing it randomly, and that's when things go wrong. And I learned that the hard way at World's End. So like second time around at Grindstone, I had a super diligent plan. And when I couldn't execute it on it anymore, my crew knew that they had to help me do it. So that's number 1. And then number 2 would be like my mentality. I didn't study the course very well for World's End because I had this like confident attitude where I was like, I can just crush any climb. It doesn't matter. But once my legs started to go, every time I stood at the bottom of another hill, it was like, oh man, not another one. Like I didn't know what was coming around the corner. And so I was almost unable to be in a positive headspace because of that. So at Grindstone, I studied the course like scrupulously. And I knew exactly how many big climbs were left and like when to let loose, and when to kind of like sit back a little bit and try to recover.
And then what was your nutrition plan that you really stuck to? Was it just not just things that maybe you liked, but where you was like, I'm going to take 250 calories of food and 100 calories in the bottle like every hour? Or what was your
Yeah, it was like I should be going through my 1.5 liter water pack every 8 to 10 miles. And then I'm eating 60 to 70 calories every 20 minutes. And like I have 3 different things that I eat, and I know like how much of each of those things is that many calories. And just 20 minutes, alarm goes off and I have to get it down.
Mm-hmm. And how about physically? Did you have any build up events as precursors? Did you do like a 50 or 100K this year? I didn't get to sufficiently stalk your ultra sign up profile.
I didn't do any other events this year, partially because like I was so freaked out by the whole experience at World's End. Not to mention that day, my boyfriend dropped me off and immediately hit a deer and totaled his car. So like it just felt like a bad omen to do a tune-up race. So I just focused on getting a lot of 40 to 50 mile long runs in and just being super dialed in during those.
Yeah. Did he proceed to go recover the deer and like Arlen has over his shoulder there? Does that look familiar right there by chance?
Yeah, I guess the state trooper that came to like record the incident was like, all right, do you want to want me to bag it for you? And we were like, we're from the city. So he was like, what the heck is going on here? Yeah, no, did not keep it though, ultimately.
All right, I'm going to toss you out again, Arlen. I'll be back. All right, so and then for Dan, how about you? Any precursors or things that you intentionally worked into a lineup?
Yeah, I took last year off of running just because of injuries and did a lot of biking. This year, raced Hat 50K, Catoctin 50K, and then my friend Pat Blair, who I ran the first 37 miles with, we went for 3 FKTs together that he demolished me on most. Those were kind of the precursors, which were all fantastic. I spent way too many hours in Catoctin, which were all just painful, but it all paid off in the end. So those were
and so
all
you
really
came in not necessarily with building up 50K or like 50 mile, 100K, whatever in that regard. You just came in really fit and kind of confident in your fitness.
Yeah. And, I spent some time in the Adirondacks, hiking around there, the trap dike. It's super fun out there. Yeah, and just came ready to race. I felt that was the fittest I've ever felt confident going in, which was super fun. I feel like most races I go into not feeling very confident. This was the first race that I walked into feeling like, okay, I think I can win this, which is the first time ever. And
in the years of putting on, I guess I've been around the scene for a while now. And one of the events that I put on is the Virgil Crest Ultras and the Virgil Crest 100. So in the years of putting that on, I've seen that interesting reality of sometimes the people that come in fit and for themselves are more apt to DNF than those that come in out of shape, right? Because you go out harder, you're playing into that fitness, you feel really good, whereas those that are kind of out of shape don't. Like they just go out hiking earlier on, they're kind of taking their time, and I would say statistically they're more apt to finish. That kind of play in, or you just went in feeling confident and you're just like, let's just go for it?
I think, every race style has its own merits. Like you can race to win, you can race to place, you can race to finish. I was racing to win. So I knew that at a certain point I had to make a big move, specifically on my friend Pat, because I knew he was just a monster. So I knew that like at 30 mile 37, I could see him struggling a little bit and he kind of disappeared, that I kind of had to make my move, and I did. And I think you're right. There was a very good chance I DNF'd. It's just somehow I didn't bonk and just kind of kept going.
Yeah, so it worked. And then pulling that up, that's right. I always forget that Grindstone is not the so Pat, you're in there. Where did Pat end up finishing? I was just trying to stalk the results on the back end, but I forgot the actually I have it maybe right here. What Pat you end up finishing? Oh, there you are. 22 so hours, 10th or so.
Yeah.
But
that's his first 100, and literally from the time I left him to the time I finished, I just had a vision of Pat hammering me down and just catching me.
And there's some all the names I don't necessarily know. Like I don't know if I remember Andrew. Nicholas, I know the name of in terms of being pretty speedy. Were there others in the mix that you were aware that were going to be there, or was everybody a relative unknown?
So like I knew of Nick and Pat. Nick, Pat, and I ran together for pretty much the first 37 miles together. But at the turnaround, I had about 40 minutes on Nick, and then by mile 65, I had about an hour and 15. So like I knew I was just floating along and felt really good. I try not to pay attention too much, and honestly, the time just kind of flew by. Like 18 and a half hours feels like a long time, but when you're engaged in that moment, it kind of flies by, honestly. It felt
which is awesome in terms of speaking to maybe the flow state that you were in, and also a really pretty course, right? I mean, it's nice to be kind of lost out there a bit. Sparkles and shines at night.
A lot of it, yeah.
The gorgeous course.
Start time, for those that also don't know, 6 p.m. I don't remember. What's the start time at Grindstone? 6 p.m.
Yeah.
Which is also a different experience. I mean, there's not many, right? You get Hellgate and you get Black Forest, but there's not many where you're getting that early night running angle. Right on. So for those who, because this is early, I mean, Shannon, this was your first 100. Dan, it was your second. Any tips out there for I guess everybody's different. Everybody finds maybe different weaknesses that they have or strengths or whatever, but any general tips and specific to Grindstone?
I think the tip is train in Patapsco because I don't know Shannon,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we both train, I think, in the same state park. So like just train in Patapsco State Park and you're gonna do well.
Yeah, I have seen Patrick Blair out there at 4 a.m. on Saturdays, and he was with someone, and I now know that it might have been you. So we train in the same park, and it's got some good hills there, and obviously really prepared us.
And it is good. I was really just going down and running it just a couple years ago. I think I was really impressed too. It was such an amazing resource for proximity to Baltimore. I mean, you really do get into some parts of that network which feel really remote and just really kind of beautiful, and it's a pretty awesome resource.
Absolutely.
It's amazing. We love it.
Right on. Well, I guess that is kind of the tip at the moment is to one, maybe be from Maryland, and then two, maybe get yourself to Patapsco.
There you go.
Right or don't leave it for us. That's fine.
True. Good point. And so what comes next for each of you?
I don't have a plan yet. I had a really great time, so I want to do another 100-miler, I think, but I don't know which one. But I'll probably take my time and train for a while again.
I'm going to take some time and mountain bike a little bit, and then I'm hoping you were talking about Hellgate earlier. I think I'm hoping the same crew that about 4 of us came out to Grindstone together. I'm hoping we all race Hellgate together, and then I'm hoping we can all peer pressure each other into doing MMT as well.
Yep. Well, cool. Well, if I do something really stupid and I send back in my application there and I see you down there, Shannon, Hellgate, any interest in Hellgate there?
Do it.
I don't know. If we see each other at Patapsco and you maybe give me a speech then trying to convince me to do it, I don't know. We'll see.
All right, 4 a.m. pressure.
That's a healthy response. I think by the time I finished last year, the top 10 men and Rachel and a couple others were maybe long finished, but at least still hanging out there. I think half asleep. I think Debova was maybe passed out or somebody right there on the couch. But so assuming that you both finish well ahead of me, it would be good to hear how it goes down at the front ends for both of you. And let's see, just in case, Rachel, I don't get a video on you yet. Are you on that back end? Maybe or maybe not. There you are. Before I lose Dan and Shannon, since we're talking about Hellgate and since we're talking about Shannon maybe being down there going hard.
Yeah, you should do Hellgate. Everyone should do Hellgate.
Yeah. Yeah. So I figured maybe if anybody's going to do some arm twisting there, it could be Rachel to speak favorably.
If you like Grindstone, you'll love Hellgate. And then you're going to love it so much. You're just going to do it 3, 4, 5 years in a row, and you'll become part of the cult. You can't get out.
That is a weird thing. How people just keep returning to Hellgate as part of that cult. It is a relative little cult.
It is super fun. It's definitely worth it.
Right on. All right, Rachel, I'm going to boot you back off, but thanks for being on here. I'll talk to you in a minute.
Guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So awesome. And from Blandford here, who will pace John Dennis if Dan runs MMT?
We have a good crew of people of many capable people who have paced John Dennis.
Yeah. Right on. All right. Well, congrats to both of you. Both really awesome performances. It'll be great to see how you continue to, I don't know, what comes next for you guys. I'll be excited to see it. Maybe you're like Dan, you'll be like, I don't know, I'm just mountain biking from here. And maybe Shannon, you'll be like, I don't know, I'm actually just going to hang out and run in Catoctin. And maybe that's it. But nice work so far. But it'll be cool to see where you go from here.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Totally. All right. So hopefully I'll talk to you guys more later.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. All right. See ya.
Thanks.
All right. So shifting gears, we are going to head north to New Hampshire. I am going to weave in Brianna and Zack not to be confused with Zack because one has a C and one has a K there, even though I think technically they're both spelled with a CH. Zack, thanks for shortening it with a K there. Yeah. And thanks for all being on here. So I am shifting gears and heading up north to the Kilkenny. Kilkenny is, if I remember right, I think I ranked it, I don't know, second toughest or something like that, second or third in terms of 50 milers. Really burly course, a lot of elevation gain and loss, some signature, I think, whites technicality in that mix. And so, it is all of that. And so Zack McCarthy coming in from Hanover, Maine. Is that right?
Yep.
Right on. And taking the win, less than 2 minutes off of Peter Howe's course record. So, man, that was close. And then we have Brianna. And Brianna, are you in Tucson, or is that just where you were originally from?
So that is the Ultra sign up address, because that is where mail will go in the wintertime. I'm working in New Hampshire at the moment.
I thought that, but yeah. All right.
Yeah.
And where are you in New Hampshire? You're somewhat out in the bush in New Hampshire on occasion, but when you're in a house like you're in at the moment, where are you in New Hampshire?
So this is actually my official office. So I'm up in Pinkham Notch, so just a little bit south of Gorham. For those who kind of know the area, it's a little bit just down Tuckerman's Ravine from Mount Washington.
Right on. And this is your, if I did the quick stalk in passing, was this your third Kilkenny?
This was my third Kilkenny. The Kilkenny was actually my first 50 miler that I ever ran. And I did that in 2018. Took a couple of years away from it. Did it last year, and I was like, I just got to come back, do it one more time.
Well done coming back and just doing it one more time there. So we can get into that. But Brianna crushed the prior course record by over 20 minutes and a PR for you by over an hour with some really fast, tough women on that list of top times on Kilkenny in just the short amount of time that it's been on the books. And then Zack coming in with the K, coming at us from Saranac Lake, and third overall in the marathon in 5:31, and getting in more time for you, right? Kind of Adirondacks, and now tying in some of the whites. And I think Christina, when I reached out and said, hey, who are some people I could talk to here? I just thought you might have some, or maybe you guys talked about it a little bit, but in terms of conversing about the similarities or differences between the Adirondacks and the whites here.
Sure.
So let's see. So Zack, Zack McCarthy, was this was your first Kilkenny, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Was it your first 50 miler?
Yep.
Yeah. Well done, sir.
Thank you.
Yes. And then, so maybe Brianna, since you're the way veteran on this course, give us kind of the overall picture of Kilkenny, a little bit about the course, what it's all about, or what people can, what they're going to find at Kilkenny.
Sure. So Kilkenny's a fun one, kind of like, I think it was Dan before who was saying, like with the out and backs, you get to kind of see where everyone behind you is after you hit the turnaround. And so you're going out, you have a pretty good climb to start up with, but it's a little less maybe technical than some stuff in the whites. Up to Mount Cabot, then hanging out on the ridge, going over some smaller peaks for a while until you end up on another 4,000 footer, which is Wombeck. And then you go all the way down again to the turnaround before you head right back up and do it all over again. It's definitely a rocky course. It's oftentimes pretty wet, a little bit slippery, but I think we had, better conditions this year than other years have been. A little bit drier, which helps a lot with those steeper ascents and descents.
And out there, are you getting some of the like lichens that make it actually a little bit slick, or are you getting some of the grit to the rock where you can actually grab pretty well and have confidence out there?
I feel like it really depends on the day. There are some slick ones out there. I like to think of them as like they're greasy almost, like someone's gone out and slimed them a little bit before you go out there.
Which is really nice. I mean, it was nice of that person to grease it up.
I was joking with a friend today, like we should have the little footwear that the fishermen wear when they're out walking in the river, those little felt booties. So there's definitely some of that, but there's also some grippier stuff, more like on the Wombeck side, to be able to kind of cruise on that section. Does that sound about right, Zach?
Zach or Zach.
Yeah,
Zach
either one.
Yep. Let's go McCarthy. Let's go McCarthy for the 50 miler.
Yeah, I mean, it's 50 miles of White Mountain single track. Like, it's just hiking trails in the Whites. Beautiful terrain. Definitely rocky. The first portion, or I guess the last portion for the 25 milers, like going up to, I forget the name, but like the first like 5 miles or so, I found to be like fairly runnable for the Whites, at least. Pretty consistent, like just dirt track without a ton. But then once you get towards like Cabot and the Weeks, and just like everything out there, it's a lot more rocky and less runnable.
And it is interesting. You're just talking about the course, and it is kind of funny. Some of the trails that are Adirondacks Whites, I don't have quite as much experience up in Maine. Went up and had a really good time running the Bold Coast Bash last November, but I haven't done much trail running in Maine. So getting up into some of the technical stuff, whether it be Magenta Cook or some of the other really technical events, it is for those who haven't spent a lot of time running up there in New England, like even where some of the trails I think make sense in a place like Virginia, where yes, you may still get some pretty technical terrain, but it kind of makes sense in terms of there's some intent to trail location and creation, where it seems like in some of the Whites or the Adirondacks, it's like there happens to be a drainage here. And so we're just going to call this drainage like a trail. And we're just going to kind of call that good in terms of just how rugged like some of this stuff is. Getting some of that on this course as an example in terms of painting a picture of the terrain in the Whites, is that kind of seem appropriate?
Yeah, I guess it seems appropriate. I don't have a ton of reference to like other, like pretty much all the terrain I run is up here in the Whites. So
buddy, there's a whole wide world out there of this, what's going to feel like a track, but on trail, where it's as much as I like to provide voice to the East Coast and Beast Coast gems, and I think we all take pride in that to a certain extent. Wow, it sure is nice just running in different areas where it's just not technical and you can just kind of flow, or pretty much just like all the races that Arlen chooses as an example on the back end. I mean, they just kind of flow like
yeah, I got to stick to my comparable advantage. Like, I'm just not going to be fast or competitive and something like that. These are the trails I enjoy being on, the stuff I have fun being out, and really where I want to spend my time. So,
yeah. And Zach, and then we're going to go into maybe the races a little bit here too. But I keep saying Zach. I got to correct myself. On the marathon, you were doing were you in a point-to-point? You shuttle out to the start, and it's a point-to-point course?
Yeah, you shuttle out to essentially what's the turnaround for the 50 miler, and then just run back towards the start of the 50 miler. Yep. So everyone finishes at the same spot.
Which it sounds like it would be fun. I mean, there's definitely the 50 miler, I imagine, turns into a big grind where it's just hard. Whereas not that the marathon's not hard, but right, I mean, there's a definitive difference between the marathon and the 50 in terms of how you're beating yourself down. And it seems like it'd be, is it fun to open up on the marathon course, or is it still so technical where it's like, I don't know, I still can't really open up. I mean, you still can't lay down that effort per se.
So yes and no. And I'll throw in a quick note. Zach, you said it wasn't very runnable after Cabot, but when you passed me, when we crisscrossed, it looked like you thought it was pretty runnable at that point. Yeah, I mean, you and Brianna too, both you were moving pretty good. But I took it pretty conservatively as far as a race strategy, because I wasn't really sure what I was getting into. That was the first time I've been in the Whites running, period. So I didn't really know what the terrain was going to be like, and decided to take it conservatively on the effort side, and found, you were talking comparison wise, like most of the climbs I didn't find to be as steep as I thought that they would be, looking at the profile. And as far as the flats were really pretty runnable. But where I felt like I really slowed me down, particularly in the first maybe 7 miles or so after I got up the first climb, was for several miles I couldn't see where my feet were under the ferns. And the sun was coming in at such an angle. I'm like, I could run this, but I can't because I don't know where anything is underneath these ferns. And there was a guy who I was running with for pretty much the first half of the race, Elliot, and he had a hat on. So at least the sun wasn't in his eyes, and he was able to kind of navigate a lot better. And I thought he was gone for sure for a while, and I caught up to him. But so that was something that really threw me off for several miles, was I just couldn't see where my feet were. For those in the Adirondacks who've done like the Nundagao loop, it's kind of similar to that. A really fun, pretty loop, but there's a lot of sections in that where you can't really see your feet. So that I thought was different, and there's a lot more like rock hopping, as was mentioned. That's a difference that I saw between specifically, say, the Adirondacks and the Whites. But I've also been told that ridge, Kilkenny, is fairly runnable even for the Whites. So that's my N of 1 experience in the Whites.
A good N1. Good N1.
Yeah, awesome.
And you're gaining more and more experience in terms of being in different areas too. And now that you're shifting, it was just last year that you moved up to Saranac, right? About a year or so ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Logan, in terms of the comment in, nope, Rachel and Arlen will be on deck. I think we're probably about maybe 10 minutes or so behind on the time scale. But dude, come on. Why are you asking me? Ask your fiance. Come on, text or fiance. That's where I'm at. Geez, that's where the year's been. Ask your wife. Don't you two communicate at this point? Come on. So Brianna, so going back, I mean, you had the experience, 2 races or runs there. What's different this year? I mean, you hammered it out there. Again, there was a pretty stout course record prior. So what did you change in your own fitness or training where you came in just ready to just roll?
Yeah, I think definitely the training side of things made the biggest difference this year, because I work up in the White Mountains. I actually help work on some of the trails, so I'm very familiar with like just how insane a lot of them are. And although it's like this passive cross training that I get to do almost every day for work, just like hiking with loads, it's not the same as running. And so I've had a better like balance of like actually getting like real runs in on trails without, carrying a propane canister or something ridiculous like that. And then also you mentioned the Tucson address. I got to actually run during the winter this year too, which made a huge difference. Like just having that consistency to be able to like go into the summer season already like still having the fitness level of the previous season.
Yeah.
Which was cool. And the other thing that I did differently this year was, I had no goal going into it, which I thought was like really ironic because it's the best that I've done at this race. I was like, I'm just gonna run it for fun. I've had so much fun running this past year. I'm not gonna like think about winning it, think about placing in it, think about anything other than just having fun and finishing it. And I think just having that mindset of like just doing what felt good just allowed me to like pace myself and like just run my best race.
Right on. And that's awesome, right? I mean, I guess that would be what we all strive for if we're racing, to not have that pressure, to be able to just enjoy being out there, being in the moment, and coming in as you had with kind of the Rocky Balboa training. I mean, you're out there doing the kind of raw work lifestyle, then to pair it with actual running fitness, which can be tough to get right in terms of the Whites, unless you're going out on roads or whatever. It can be tough to find some really runnable terrain. So it builds a certain, I think, level of strength, maybe coordination, but it can be tough, I think, to go out and get certain levels of fitness out there. And then Zack, how about for you? Anything, McCarthy? Anything for you in terms of this being your first time through that you felt like worked for you in terms of building up, or do you feel like you came in pretty fit and pretty stoked?
Yeah, this was the first time that I like truly trained for an event. I've done like other long runs or big efforts for myself in the past. Things that I've just like decided to do. I did the 24-hour event last year that I didn't train anything specifically for, and it was all flat, and like I didn't run flat all year. Just like showed up and did what I could. So it's been stuff like that before. And this was the first time that I really dedicated a good portion of the summer training specifically for this, with this effort in mind, and kind of just pushing myself beyond a point that I've been in the past, and just really putting in the time to make it happen, and going in with the confidence to, I guess like my intention was to race the course record. Previously, I was looking at running an FKT route that I decided not to, just because the turn state of the route itself. But the gentleman who has that is Peter Howe as well. So it was just kind of an opportunity to like race one of Peter's efforts, who I consider a very strong athlete in the area, and just see what I could do for myself. And yeah.
Do you train with Peter? Are you guys friends, or you just know of him?
I just know of him. He used to live in the same sort of area. I've met him like a handful of times, but he just has a handful of efforts around that. You know, I spend a lot of time running these sort of routes, and I know how stout the efforts are. Maybe others don't necessarily, or there's just not a ton of reference, but yeah.
Right on. And were you watching your watch coming in? Did you know you were close, or is at some point you were like, man, like I'm going to come up just short, or were you not really watching?
You know, I made like a half-mile wrong turn in the first half of the race, and that like put a huge mental like downer on the possibility of getting the course record. And then for the end, like for some reason I thought it was 10:48, not 10:58. And I was like, so I just started, I'm like, all right, just run it in sub 11. Like you made your wrong turn, get down there. And like I ran, I don't know, most of the last miles at like an 8-minute pace or so. Just like the downhill one. So I was certainly moving along and trying to go, but I didn't realize necessarily, I thought it was like 10 minutes off. I didn't realize it was like a minute and 47 seconds off. So, yeah.
And so for each of you, Zack on the K front, leave you wanting to head back and do the 50 mile, or you're like, nah, marathon was like good. I'm good on that. Or does it leave you wanting to 50?
As far as the race, I definitely want to go back. We'll see, you know, what my overall plans for next year end up being and kind of where it falls in the mix of things. But I love the course. I want to go back now and do with the Prezi and the President's Loop, and like have so many plans to get back to the whites, because they're seem like a lot of fun, a lot of great trails over there.
Right on.
So we'll see.
And then McCarthy, does it leave you like, wow, like I can maybe not make that half-mile wrong turn, and if I can just do that again, like I'm in contention there? Does it leave you wanting to go back as well and throw down again next year?
I probably won't do Kilkenny again next year. I'd rather set my focus towards other things. Like I'm very proud of my effort, and I'm excited more to see. I surprised myself and what I could do for myself, and just had a really good day. So I'm excited to see with some more training what I could do. I don't actually run, or I've never run in the winter in the past. Really only ran for like a handful of years now. I do a lot of skiing, and this winter I've like made the commitment to, I don't know, run a handful of miles every week and just keep some under my belt there, and try to start the year off with a bit more running fitness, and see what the year could bring. Maybe have a bit more of an actual race season and do my best to compete.
Are you doing Nordic or skimo? What's your ski background?
Yeah, I like a lot of backcountry skiing, mostly ski touring, and definitely not, I don't consider like myself a skimo person. I've never done a skimo race. I'll make a quick push up the mountain once in a while. I certainly enjoy pushing myself, but I like to take a ton of laps. Like ski or running started for me after huge winters, ski touring, where I'd do like 8,000-foot days or something because the snow was great, and I just wanted to keep taking laps and didn't want to lose that fitness. So,
right on. And then Brianna, have you accomplished all that you want to accomplish at Kilkenny? You're like, no, I just had a good time out there. Like, I don't really care about the course record. I'm going to go back again next year if I'm here and healthy.
Oh, you know, it's I do just love that course. Like I said, it was the first ultra I ever ran, and so it just has that special place in my heart from that. I'm kind of goofy that way, and you know, it's crazy to have taken like almost 2 hours off of like my original time, and so there is that part of me that's like, gosh, what else can I do on this particular run? So maybe not next year, but I'll definitely be back in the future.
Cool. And what else do any of you have on deck for this year, if any events are still in the lineup?
Doing a last person standing event, Bubba's Backyard Ultra in October 2nd. That I
That's
signed
one of
up for.
Drummond's. Am I remembering that right?
Yep. Yeah, I signed up for that a while back and decided to set my focus on Kilkenny. It's more just a fun event, going to be a huge running party. And I guess I have a goal of running 100 miles. I've never run that before, but we'll see how I recover. I mean, I certainly trained a bunch, but Kilkenny was last weekend, and I basically have 2 weeks until, or less than 2 weeks now until the race. So we'll just see how it goes and run for fun, but definitely not competing. And once I hit 100 miles, I'll drop out if I get to that point. And if I
will you just drop?
Yeah,
once you
absolutely. Hit it? There's a couple. I have no interest in destroying. I'd rather save myself for something more, or just not. I'd just be taking off the goal, I guess.
You have a very, very healthy. You all do, I think, here, but healthy personality. I mean, you weren't inclined to say, or I shouldn't say inclined to say. You're not necessarily interested in going back or driven by the course record. Here, it's not necessarily like the backyard about like the win. You're just like, nah, this is what would be meaningful to me to hit 100. Then I'm just like good there. Some of the, I guess, extrinsic motivators that maybe some other people have, or I'm teeing you up for in this conversation. It's like, no, not interested.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I do it for myself. I'm really interested in pushing myself to the best of my own abilities and just to see what I can do. And I'm certainly interested to compete more. I guess I've never won anything in my life until this race. So that was a pretty cool feeling. But at the end of the day, we're all out there to have our own best effort and to push ourselves. And I get just as excited seeing everyone else as I do for myself or for my own effort. And
Awesome. Zack and Brianna, anything else that's in the pipeline?
We'll see. I was going to try for an FKT attempt, emphasis on attempt of the Cranberry 50. So that's only about 45 minutes or so from here. I've been on it several years ago, but got on the trip last minute, 2 days beforehand. A friend called me and said everyone else bailed and would I join? I said, absolutely. So I'd like to go back and just see what I can do running it. So whether it's, an FKT or just a fun day in the woods, probably going to do that late October, early November. But really that's just a build up to early next year, Bandera. Cool.
A couple times, Rachel, I've wanted to weave you back in here too. Once again on, maybe we could twist Brianna's arm into a couple other 50s or 100Ks and now Bandera talk and all this thing. All right. So how about Brianna? What, anything else on your end that you're thinking of or
I think
planning on?
The soonest thing that I've got going on is you put in a plug for the Mid-State Massive. I won't be running it, but I'll be helping out at one of the aid stations this fall, which will be a ton of fun. And then after that, I'm heading back to Arizona, and there's a Tucson triple 50, which is 3 different 50 milers just kind of in the area, the Costlevale, Oracle Rumble, and the Old Pueblo. And so it'll be exciting to kind of see just a different landscape. I know the trails up here are definitely unique. And so the first time I went out west, I was like, oh my gosh, not all trails are just greasy rocks and, crumbling drainages. This is kind of cool. Gotta try some more of this. So I'll be doing a little more runnable rock trails this winter.
Are your roots, did you grow up in New Hampshire? Where are you from?
Yeah, this was home for me. And so until I was 18, this is what I just thought all trails were.
Yeah. So Tucson, I imagine, is a fun playground. Also thinking of you there, Rachel, and seeing your photos of just going out west and just playing for a while. It's fun to be on some fun, runnable trails. Yeah. Well, right on. Well, you guys, it was awesome. Brianna, congrats on just destroying that course record. McCarthy, nice work in getting close and then coming out with just being stoked about your effort. And that's your takeaway. I think that's an awesome perspective. And then Zack, it's nice to see you. I feel like I'm seeing you every few months at this point, or every 6 months. So hopefully we'll cross paths at a race next year.
Sure.
And hopefully Cranberry is just a really fun and enjoyable day out. And there's a comment here on that note. Did Cranberry 50 early in October, and it was a beautiful run with the trees turning color. Highly recommend. And I've only heard good things about the Cranberry circuit. So hopefully that's going to be awesome. Well, right on. Well, congrats to all of you. I really appreciate you taking some of your time out here tonight, and hopefully we'll get to connect with each of you again at some point.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Totally.
Congrats to both of you again. Great job, man.
Both of you as well.
Both of you. Yeah.
Yeah. Congratulations. Thank you.
Yep. All right. So we are going to switch gears into our last event and bring in some voices of the evening. So I am going to weave back in Arlen and Rachel. Thanks for being good sports and letting me weave in and taking pokes there. Sorry, I said fiance instead of bride at this point, but it's been a pretty overwhelming year. Logan, sorry, couldn't weave that. Yeah. So it is wonderful to have both of you, to see you both again. So I am going to weave in, or we're going to turn our attention to Run Rabbit Run. For those who aren't already familiar, Run Rabbit Run is out in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. This was an event that had a lot of sentimental and personal meaning for me. One of my closest people in my life and girlfriend through undergrad was one of the key people in starting Run Rabbit Run. Her name was Jenna Grubin, and she was a Colorado native, and she was there kind of at the outset and getting the event going. And she passed, unfortunately, in a car accident coming back from Moab, red hot 50K. I think in 2010 it was. So it's been a while. But Run Rabbit Run is definitely an incredible event. I went out early on and did the 50 mile when it was just, I think, a 50 mile, if I remember right. I don't know if there was a sub event from there. Had kind of a rough day, but it just felt really special to be out there. And now it's just grown. It's continued to be one of the higher profile, I think for sure, 100 milers out there. The community has really rallied to establish, I think, one of the highest purses out there, right? Are there any other races that have higher purses at this point than Run Rabbit Run?
I don't think so. I think it's definitely, I'm pretty sure it's definitely the top.
Yeah. So definitely it is out there. And I think for the first number of years where they still were offering maybe it started with a $10,000 prize purse or something to that effect. And felt like for the first few years, it still wasn't getting a very deep field. Like it would maybe get like one or two kind of speedsters, but it didn't really have the depth of field. And now I think that the sport is growing more and more. There are people that are just, I don't know, there's 10 people out of Montana or 10 people out of Colorado. They're like, I don't know your name, but you're just suddenly like wicked fast. And it's just a lot deeper scene. And so it's cool to see it shake out. And for both of you, Arlen coming out of Ohio, Rachel coming out of Virginia, I was pretty stoked to see how you'd both do. And I think for both of you running second, Rachel, you were in second for a while?
I was in second until I got hypothermia. I was in second. I actually started at 10th. So I kind of slowly made my way up. By mile 60, I think I was in second. And then I was running in second until mile 80. And then I had to stop at an aid station for an hour. So
yep.
I ended up with 5th.
Okay. Which is awesome. And Arlen on second on the day. Was there any team angle there, or either of you teamed up with somebody?
Our partners dropped. The next time we're picking up each other. No, people like found us and like we got partnered up before we knew each other were racing, and now we have a pact that we're gonna be teammates because we would have won if we were together.
I was gonna say, man, I think Ellie and I failed then. We should have just linked you two like in that mix.
I think I had a partner before Arlen because I've been signed up for quite a while for this race, and Arlen,
I have a habit of being late to the party, and that's just what happened. Like Yeah, I'm sure she had a partner before I was signed up, because for all my races are kind of like last minute things. But oh well.
So for those not familiar with Run Rabbit Run, I mean, this is both your first time through, but you both very much just experienced it, whether it be one of you or a combination of both of you. For those who aren't familiar, take them through a little bit about what the Run Rabbit Run course is all about in terms of like metrics or feel. Kind of give us the overview.
Go for it, Rachel.
Okay, well, I'd say this is like my first West Coast race that I did that had like an East Coast feel. Like there was a really big community at this race, and like it was a lot of fun. Not saying that I haven't had fun at other East or West Coast races, but just like before the race, during the race, after, it just gave me that like home feel, even though home was a far away. But the course itself, it ends up being like, I don't know, 102 miles. I think it's like almost 20,000 feet of elevation gain. And it's pretty rough. Like there are a lot of sections that are really runnable. There's a few like big climbs, but a lot of actual running. You kind of go up some really steep stuff and you go down a lot of mountain bike mountain bike trails. So you really tie your legs out quickly. People start out so fast. I've met this race, and maybe it's because there's all that money, but people start out so fast. Like I felt like I was in the mix of like a 50K, 100K in the beginning, especially some of the men. I think Arlen probably ran it pretty smart, but there was a lot of carnage. I guess that's what money does to people. Makes them run really fast for a little bit. This year, yeah, the weather was crazy. It hailed and rained some more. So if you weren't prepared enough in one section, you might have ended up with some hypothermia. But yeah.
It's funny to hear the East Coast individual weighing in and just referring to it as West Coast race, right? Because it's like in the Rockies and not really West Coast, but for us East Coasters, it's like you just kind of lump it in with like the West Coast, like whereas
all the West Coast. Someone else said that to me too. That was in Colorado. They're like, you keep calling this the West Coast, and I'm like,
yeah. I don't know. You're probably like 1,000 miles in like a 20-hour drive from the coast or whatever. But it's just like whatever. It's not East Coast, so it's not the It's not the Midwest or whatever. It's not the flyover states, so it must be West Coast. Yeah.
Yeah. Steamboat feels pretty far west, so I think I'm gonna keep calling it West Coast.
You should just stick to your guns right there.
Yeah, but a lot of climbing, a lot of descending. I feel like a lot of the time you're either going up or down, and then there's some like rolly stuff in between. But you start on some really steep climbs and you end on a really steep descent. So. Yep,
and very runnable. And Arlen, for you, are the trails very technical where you are in Ohio, or are they kind of middle of the road? Or
there's definitely some technical trails. Yeah, Ohio definitely has its share of mud and technicality. But yeah, for Run Rabbit, I would describe it as like some people would go out there and say, sure, oh, that's very runnable. Other people would say, no, that's crazy techno. And it really depends on which part of the course you're talking about. I would say most of it was very runnable. The climb out of Fish Creek Falls was very steep and very gnarly, as well as the climb from like 70 to 76 miles. Other than those two sections, it was I would say very runnable.
And I'm going to weave in a question here. I won't necessarily go in a steady trajectory. We'll get into maybe a couple topics here while I have you guys tonight in this episode. Let's just weave in a comment from Rob. What kind of calories do Arlen and Rachel try to maintain each hour in their 100-mile races, and they achieve it at Run Rabbit Run 100?
I usually look for about 200 calories an hour, sometimes more, depending where I'm at in the course. Yeah, I achieved it until like mile 85, and then I couldn't really get any more food down. But for the most part, I achieved it. Yeah, I do a combination of like gels and liquid nutrition. I use a lot of long haul. I'd like to hear Arlen's answer for this.
Yeah, yeah. So if you know me, my stomach is the toughest part of my body. Well, my head's tougher than my stomach, but anyway. So yeah, I have experimented with around 300, 350. But for Run Rabbit, I decided I've never been sick before, and I'm going to fuel properly. So I went with 4 to 450 an hour, and I was able to maintain that pretty much the whole way, except for like from 90 on, just with some logistics problems and miscommunication, wound up a little short with calories, but bridged that fairly well. But yeah, basically pretty much held at least 400 for the entire event.
And that was you mentioned earlier with Martin and Spring as kind of mainstays.
Yeah, Morton and Spring are my main nutrition, kind of my nutrition backbone is Morton, and then Spring is kind of an extra, something to mix things up a little bit, something that's not sugar.
Yep. And for you, Rachel, I mean, that's light, 2 to 250.
Yeah, I was just re-adding it though. I'm actually closer to 3 and 350 for 100.
Okay.
So yep. I would change my answer, but I'm definitely not 400. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I usually do about 3 to 350, and then when I get into like a crew or like a actual aid station, I try to like get a little bit more. But
yep. Logan, you can weigh in on the comments. What do you prep for when you know that Rachel's stomach has turned? What's the secret sauce where you're like, this is her favorite, I'm gonna have this there? And I'll look for your comment here in a second. And then for Rachel, this was, did you went out maybe did you just take a trip out and then came back, or were you out there for like the month ahead of the race?
Yeah, so I work remotely. So I actually drove out in August, and I stayed mostly with my cousin in Boulder. I have a cousin out there, and he graciously let me stay with him. And then I bopped around a little bit in our van, but I was out there for a while, so that was really fun.
That's great. And you just stayed out through, and then are you still out, or you came back? You're home at the time. I see a couple's photo over your shoulder.
Yeah. This is my home. Yep. We came back. We started our drive back. Logan flew out the week before the race, and then he drove back with me, so I didn't have to drive the whole thing by myself after the 100. So yeah, I was out there for about 5 weeks. So I wanted to really feel good about the altitude. I've been like trying to race more out west and just in some bigger races, and I haven't figured it out yet. I think I'm like one step closer, and I was hoping that being out there for a month was going to help me nail it. Not quite yet, but we're getting there.
You are getting there. I mean, for that 100-mile effort, I mean, that was a great effort, right? I mean, sometimes whatever in terms of conditions or maybe something else would have come up, and I guess you just phrased it right. I mean, you're getting there. You are getting there, but that was a pretty stellar effort. I mean, you definitely got out after it, and to finish 5th, even when it got ugly, I mean, you still hung in there. So that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, it got pretty ugly when a stranger is changing your clothes and wrapping you in some space blankets.
It's a good thing for the strangers.
Yeah.
And
so
then,
Runner Up has amazing volunteers, in case anyone was wondering.
And then for both of you, in terms of the, is it fun? Do you pay attention to, or is it fun to see some of the media surrounding it? I mean, I don't know how I know Ellie plays into, as an example, some of the free trail, whatever, cash your votes or whatever. But I would assume after your past couple of years, Arlen, I mean, you definitely have to be one of the favorites. I mean, in my eyes, you're probably one of the most bankable favorites in terms of, whether you're going to win or not. I don't know, but chances are, I mean, you're tough and you're consistent. So it seems like you'd be one of the favorites. Is it fun to see but I didn't pay attention to the media. Life is kind of too busy otherwise.
Okay, time out. I'm going to jump in here. I'm jumping in. I'm going to speak before Arlen. There were people that were calling Arlen a newcomer. They literally called him a newcomer. Like, that is a quote that I sent him. So you're saying all this, Ian, because you're on the East Coast.
East Coast, right.
Midwest, West Coast, I guess. So
We're gonna keep it West Coast. Let's just keep it at West Coast at this
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
So more people need to know. Hopefully, Arlen's success this past weekend has given him a little bit of spotlight because people are still calling him a newcomer and underdog, which is like hilarious. So
Give up the cause, Rachel. Give it up. If Western States didn't rattle their cage, nothing will.
We're gonna keep shouting how great you are. So just don't forget about us when you get into that spotlight. But you can speak for yourself now.
Oh, yeah, whatever. Like compared to Western States, honestly, Rabbit was an East Coast race. I mean, it felt like a very tight knit community. It felt like it did not feel like it got the attention, anything even close to like even to compare. You couldn't even compare it with Western States. So I feel like, to be fair, we need some perspective. Yeah, it's a big deal. There are a ton of people there that want to win that for everything they're worth. But it's, as far as the community and the people around there, it feels very small and tight knit. Yeah, volunteers were great. Aid stations were great. People were great. But yeah, it didn't feel like a big Boston event or anything like that.
Did it? Do you guys? I mean, Rachel, I know because you're kind of a geek of the sport in there, and you really know like who's who. I mean, did you know who you were surrounded by and running with, even though there's new faces? Or like Arlen, are you aware as well, or you don't really geek out in that way, and you're just like, I don't know who that guy is, but it doesn't matter. We're just running.
Go ahead.
I know faces and stuff. So, and I'm a nerd of the sport, as you kindly mentioned.
I said geek, but nerd works too. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
I will own every second of that. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the sport, but I don't feel weird about stepping up. I've also put myself into some pretty competitive situations. So it's exciting to race people that I haven't raced before, whether they're better than me or maybe they're not better than me or whatever. But I feel pretty comfortable knowing a lot of names and faces on the start line. So, but a lot of people knew me too, which was cool. And just everyone was super friendly.
Was there anybody that you knew of that were, I guess, do you pay attention once the gun goes off? Because I know you're very good at running your own races. You're very calculated.
Yeah,
where I should be.
Probably the best that I ever ran. Like I said, I was in an aid station for an hour, so that kind of derailed me a little bit. But I mean, I started in about 10th place. At mile 20, I was in 10th place with a woman named Katie Arnold. She's in New Mexico, and she's 50 and she's amazing. And someone thought she was my mom, so that was pretty cool.
Did she think that was pretty cool?
That was a big two highlights. Somebody called me Annie Hughes once, and then the second one was like, "Oh, you and Katie Arnold, that's your mom?" And I was like, "Okay." They're like, "What a cool mother-daughter event." But yeah, I ran my race really well. Like I said, I was in 10th with her, and we were trucking along and having a good time. And then by mile 60 is when I kind of started to make moves. And I felt pretty good about I was going to run sub 22 hours. So, and I know that because I've tortured myself the last 24 hours about looking at my splits, and I've now cut myself off. So I ran my race really well. And I didn't really let any of the hype or anybody else that was in front of me. I mean, like I said, some of those women went out really, really fast, and some of them finished after I did, or they DNF'd. And yeah, so it was a good time.
And that is a fun one to go out after. I mean, with that purse on the line or whatever, I don't know. And because it is so runnable, yes, you get the elevation, or in terms of the altitude rather, where some people do well at altitude, some people don't. And yes, there's elevation gain, but it's kind of par for the course for 100 mile. And yes, you get some climbs, but you can really hammer. And so
there's a lot of, I would say that there's a lot of rolling stuff that you can make some moves on. And then also the tricky part too is, it depends on how you do with altitude, because the course runs pretty consistently at 10,000 feet. It drops down a few times, back down to 6 to 7, but then it goes back up in the later half of the course, the last 15 miles before you drop down for the final descent. You're running at the highest point. So you do have to manage the altitude, but I think even coming from somewhere that doesn't have a lot of altitude, you can do that with proper fueling and just coming in at shape like Arlen did, because you're not topping out past 10,000 feet.
And then Arlen, how about your race? I know there was some jockeying, but you were kind of rolling in that second for a good chunk of it, right?
Not really. No,
okay.
I didn't spend. I spent less than an hour in second place, I think.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. So, yeah, they went out super hard. I think I got to the top of the mountain 5.5 miles in, around 15th place. I wasn't counting for sure, but yeah, they went out super hard. I felt like I was in a very comfortable spot. This was my first race with a significant amount of altitude, which is why kind of three reasons I chose this race. One, I'm deathly afraid of the cold. Second, I've never run through the night. Third reason was I wanted something with more altitude and more climbing. So I kind of like attacked all of my greatest fears with this race. Yeah, they run out super hard. To answer your previous question on the competition, did not really know most of the guys I was running with, but there were a few guys that I was kind of hanging out really close to and had the confidence, like, these guys have done tons of mountain races and they're not in nearly as good a shape as me. So I felt comfortable with them. But all in all, like, I blew up. Like, I went out way too hard. And I'm okay with that. Like, I'm at peace with that. I've never blew up really bad during a 100-mile race. And that's really sorry for someone who has 15 finishes under their belt and no DNFs. That's like, I feel like I'm way too cautious. And so that my goal going into this is leave it all out there. That's what I want to do. Definitely blew up though, big time. Like, yeah, the end was just an absolute, I don't know what to call it, suffer fest, but we all blew up together. So I felt like I was in good company. I mean, these guys with much more experience than me, we were battling it out in the high country. So yeah, as far as how placement went, I forget exactly how the day panned out, but I do remember being in like maybe third place at 76 miles. And it was kind of after this long, like one of the most difficult climbs on the course. And at that point, guy came up behind me, Nick Elson, and he had we had a 23-minute gap, 6 miles before that. And so he closed a 23-minute gap on me. And that just tells you like how rough the climbing was going for me. But now we're in the high country. And so the last 24 miles, I just kind of battled it out with him while still Avery Collins was ahead of us. And we were both kind of like, Avery had kind of taken it out really hot and like everybody thought he was going to win. And he was definitely the smoking gun on the course. But yeah, he began to struggle a bit. And so we were both kind of like trying to run down this second place, but we were also like, Nick was definitely outrunning me on the flat. It was only on the downhill. And so I tried to kind of set the stage and tried to keep passing him on the downs. But yeah, so kind of just a struggle bus, was within 1 minute of him for like the last 2 hours maybe of the course. And they just kept telling me like, he's 1 minute ahead, you can catch him. And I thought I was off course once. And so like had to call my sister and ask her. I never take my phone with me, but I was nervous about that 30-mile section at the end with no crew access. Had to call my sister and like find out if I'm on course. And like, it was a logistical nightmare. But one of the craziest things was like during the most miserable part of the race, like where I could not even run the flat sections, stumbled into an aid station, and there's Avery Collins sitting over by the heater, and also Nick Elson sitting there sipping down broth, trying to, and here we are, second, third, and fourth place, and you know how much prize money there is, and we're all sitting at the aid station, just like total zombie mode. We all went out way too fast. We're all just completely wrecked. And yet, like, what's so funny, I think, like, people would fight way harder at Western States, at the end of Western States. I think there's something about money that makes you eager at the beginning, and you could care less.
Less when it really hits the...
Yeah, with a noon start, you've been up for 30 hours. And even if you're running fast, you've been up for 30 hours, and you could care less how many $1,000 is passing you. Like, it doesn't matter. But it was such a fun, I mean, not fun at the moment. Like, it was probably the lowest points I've ever been in a race. But, like, just to battle it out and knowing that I couldn't catch the guy in front of me because he was just stronger than me. But I just kept this in the back of my head thinking, if I could just catch him before the last descent, like, I know I can run downhill. Like, that is my strength. And yeah, it was something when I came into the aid station after having a huge delay, fell over, got all tore up and dirty and ripped my bib off, and like had to call my sister and find out if I'm on chorus, and just like everything went wrong in that last from like 90 to 96 miles, because it's like 102 miles. But got to the last aid station and Nick's sitting in the chair, and I was like, okay, I got this. And I was out of fuel. I had messed up my fueling strategy, and so I just downed a bunch of Coke right at the end, and he took off before me because he was ready to go. And then I just like hammered that last, there's like about a 4,000 foot descent in the last 6 miles. And so just hammered that, and I was just like in my zone. I finally got my wheels under myself and just like hammered out a 6:30 pace for the last almost hour. At one point, I was taking such a serious approach. I like turned my headlight off, and then the reflectors, the flags wouldn't show up without my headlight on. So I lost the flags for a bit. Again, I had to call my sister, and she was like in the bathroom, and she like tore out of the bathroom, went running out to the finish line and asked the race director, like, does he go down over the hill or down the road? And the race director's like, tell him to go down the road. So I'm like, tear down the road. And I look back, and Nick's like, he had closed that 2-minute gap that I had put on him. He had closed that, and it almost caught me at that point. And so I took off again, and then I get clear down to the bottom, and like went off course again, and like again I had to stop and run backwards on course to look.
You are a newcomer out there. What's going on?
Yeah,
phoning a friend and going off
course. It was kind of tough. There's a bunch of construction going on. They're putting it's at the ski resort there, and they're putting a new lift in. Yeah. And it was just that it was well marked. It was just very tough to see where the course goes.
Well, you also don't get pacers either. So, like, there's nobody to help guide you when you're that far deep into the pain cave. You're kind of out there by yourself. But
do the tortoises get pacers and the hares don't? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Would you both take pacers? Rachel, I'm assuming you would take a pacer. Arlen, are you a pacer person? I don't remember if you had one for Western.
I definitely would. This was going to be fun to try to figure out these tricky head games by myself for the first time. But yeah, I definitely would take a pacer, especially on that course, just to help keep me on track.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe for that course, but I actually haven't done a race where you get a pacer for a significant amount of time, other than I did Black Canyons, and I didn't have like access to a pacer because Logan was screwing me, and then Hellgate, you don't get a pacer, and Old Dominion 100, you only get a pacer for 10 miles. So I actually do really well by myself, and like in my like head, in my own thoughts, like I can usually move pretty good. Like if my husband would pace me, that's usually when I get like a little vulnerable. And I like, he tries to get me to move faster, and I'm just like, why don't you love me? So if I did a race where you get a pacer for like an extensive period of time, I don't think it could be him. I think I need Arlen to pace me.
Let me know.
Well, nice work to both of you. That's it was pretty awesome. I didn't get to follow it in real time, but I was checking in here and there, and then I got too busy to dig in and geek out on the reports on how it went. So it was good to hear a bit about it. What do you guys got? I don't remember. Are you guys signed up for anything else? What, Rachel, are you another Hellgate? Is that?
I don't think so. I think I'm going to take a pass this year and really get ready for a good. I kind of put my body through a lot in 2022. So plus, I think Logan is having some chatter about wanting to do that race. So I might be on the other side crewing, which would be pretty fun. Yeah. So I think I accomplished what I wanted to last year. I don't think there's room to do more of that this year. So plus, I think it's going to be an awful weather year.
It's due, right? And I don't remember, is your focus Bandera? What are you?
I'm actually, I don't think I've said that out loud though. So I don't know how you need
Maybe I'm just starting to feel your headspace at this point.
Yeah, I'm planning on going out to Bandera the beginning of January, just kind of keep shooting my shot and, put myself on those really competitive start lines. I'm coming back to Run Rabbit next year. I'm doing this race again. So, and I'm going to win.
The shot has been called. Yeah.
So
what does your mom Katie think about that? Does she have confidence? And that's the.
What did you say?
Your mom Katie Arnold. What does she think about that? Yeah.
I think she thinks I can do it. You should ask what my husband thinks. He'd be really happy if I.
Well, your husband thinks. Funny you should say. That thinks that he wants Arlen to be his brother-in-law.
I do got two sisters, Arlen.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Although one is getting married, so that means but she's not married yet. But yeah, I'm doing
on that. Logan was awesome. So I had my two sisters and my parents out crewing for me. But it was so cool. I told that Logan happened to be at the aid station with my crew when I came through, and I had to break the news to him. I'm like, sorry, I'm only 50 miles in. My climbing legs are gone. And Logan's so encouraging. He's just like, Arlen, everybody's hurting like you. He said, if you have to hike with a purpose. And I carried that with me the rest of the way. I'm convinced if I didn't have that little devil in my shoulder telling me to hike with a purpose, there's no way I would have caught Nick Elson at 96 miles and been able to pull off the stunt of my career. But yeah, anyway, just on that, since Logan had to jump in the chat.
Yeah, he's the best crew person for me. Every time I'm at a start line and I see somebody that I know, or I start running with somebody that I just like, I'm like, if you need anything, just talk to my husband. He'll help you. He will help anybody. So yeah, he did. He helped a guy from Canada. He gave him a headlamp. He helped another guy that we just met that's on the East Coast that had an amazing race. Gave him some food and stuff. Logan's everybody's biggest cheerleader. So yeah, he got me to keep moving at the end, even though I was pretty sure we were going to get a divorce because you could have a runner with you the last 3 or 4 miles or so. They could have climbed up the last climb and ran down with you. So of course he met me and he was yelling at me and he's like, Rachel, you're going to lose another $500, which also was not part of the plan because I am not very money motivated. So I told him if it was going to come down to a finish where I needed to be motivated, he was supposed to motivate me with no more global warming, world peace, everyone's going to stop eating meat, something tangible that made me feel good. And he screwed that part up. So, but he did get me to run at the finish when I was my legs were shot from sitting down for an hour and my body just going into survival mode. He was like, you got to run. And I did. I did. Yeah. 6th place by 20 seconds and it was a good time. So, but I'm coming back to this race next year. That's all.
Logan's powerful. He was up there when Tara Dower come through and she was in third. And Logan's you can catch that girl in front of you. And she took off and put 2 minutes on her, I believe. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, he's got away with words or something like that.
And Arlen, anything planned, anything else at this point that you're in the pipeline for?
Oh boy, I feel like Rachel, you asked me a question I wasn't prepared to broadcast before the world. I feel kind of stupid because I have not even contacted the race yet. I'm full. But
you don't have to say it if it puts you in all.
Pretty sure I think no. Hey, the reward for tuning in, the reward for tuning in live. You heard it right here first. Javelina. I want to go back there. Feeling really good, and I did my coldest race ever, and I can't wait to hit the desert again. Yeah.
I imagine it was fun just seeing your family all over the place at Western States out there, and just hearing you comment on them being at Run Rabbit Run. I mean, they're getting to hit these like big parties. Now they're going out to Javelina. I mean, they're going to one of the parties of the year to just go out there and just kind of hang out.
Yeah. The Javelina is more of a party than I need. But yeah, dude, the desert is just, I love the desert. Sorry, Rachel. I love the desert. Mountains are cool. Desert's cool. Anything different.
Yep. Well, word's out now. I mean, I suppose I can text the RD and put in a good word, but
now you gotta like make some moves, Arlen.
Yeah, I need to. Dude, I worked the last 2 days, like a full day. I mean, who's got time for stuff like that? I mean,
oh yeah,
I have time. I can text on my way home tonight and see if I can, put in a good word. But now, clearly, no doubt, he's watching, Trails Collective live at the moment. So it's, word's probably already out there.
Well, West Coast is always tuned into what's going on back here, right, Rachel?
Yeah, there's nobody in the West Coast, let alone the Rockies, that are tuning into this at all, and nor will they ever. They're like, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, hopefully you get in, and hopefully you crush it as a high doggy dog. Just wait in with there.
As you little underdog. Hopefully you can do well at your 100-miler.
Yeah. It'll be good to be a newcomer again out there. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Last year, the phrase of the weekend was the unknown runner from Ohio. And I never get tired of that one. Like, that's one of my all-time favorites.
Do you think Run Rabbit was your breakout race then?
They said that Western States was my breakthrough. And you saw what happened at Run Rabbit. Like, the race director wondered who I was. I mean, come on. They'll never get these East Coasterners will always, we're like a stealth bomber. We'll always be under the radar.
What about Bighorn? It seems like Bighorn could be up your alley as a course.
Yeah, I
weird
definitely want to. There's just not enough me. There's too many races and not enough me. I'm the kind of guy.
Now there's a good quote for the newcomer to take away is Arlen. The quote: "There's not enough me."
Yeah, no, I can only cram about 500 milers in a year, competing at the level I can. Yeah, only. Sorry, Rachel, only. And Bighorn, sign me up. But there's also like 10 other races this time of the year. So I definitely am learning that I need to plan to run mountains in the summertime when I can run when the snow's not flying. I need to be in the mountains for that short little window.
Right on. Well, you guys, I think both did awesome. Way to represent the Beast Coast, and I'm grateful both just to see you both again and chat for a bit for taking up some of your time here this evening. I really appreciate it when you probably could be sleeping hard at this point.
No, it was great chatting and reliving the good times, most of the good times, eating miles of the good times.
The abuse we put ourselves through in terms of the good times.
That's right. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Totally. Well, right on. And last comment there, save the phone calls to get him a big shoe sponsor.
I don't know. Logan is already talking about being Arlen's agent, and I'm pretty sure he's already going to create our own shoe company or something just so he can sponsor Arlen. Not his wife. He wants to sponsor Arlen. So,
well, clearly
he's like, I'm going to be Arlen's agent, and I'm like, okay, honey.
Well, clearly that relatively unknown newcomer behind the N Normal brand. I mean, they probably have no idea on West Coast versus East Coast. Maybe you just plant the seed with N Normal.
Americans.
Yep. Yeah.
If you get Killian's number, Arlen, let me know.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I got his in my speed dials. Just kidding.
There's not enough Arlen for the speed dials. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to catch my kids before bed here. I really appreciate, again, both of you taking your times, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you, Beth, both when it comes around next round.
Yes. Good to see you
All right.
guys. Bye.
All right,
Thanks,
Good night,
Ian.
Rachel. Yeah, good night, Arlen. All right, so thanks to everybody for tuning in live. I really appreciate it. For those who tune in not live after the fact, I appreciate it as well. Feel free to drop some comments. Occasionally we get it. Thanks to all of you supporting the Trails Collective, weighing in with comments, suggestions. I'm grateful for the support, and it makes it fun. So until next week, I kind of had some idea of what was coming next week, but now my head's mush. So until whatever comes next week, I hope you have a great weekend. And until then, see ya.